Certainly want to thank the governor for making this meeting with us here. And I have to thank him because the common sense approach that has happened here with this COVID disaster has worked. We're COVID winners. We've had the past 3 months are the best months we've had in 16 years. The people love coming here. They love the freedom of being able to come out, and they're outside, and we have the whole setup out there in the parking lot. It's all worked wonderfully, and I tell you, this traveling we've done where we don't see any common sense, and we come back here, and it's worked phenomenally well, and I'm definitely honored to have the governor here with us today.
Yes.
Thank all of you.
Well, we're really happy that they're doing well at the Garlic, and I'm sure they do exceptional. It is also the case, though, that a lot of places are doing very well in Florida, and we're really proud of that. And I think that I talked to a lot of people, particularly in hospitality, and particularly at the beginning of the first few months of this year. First quarter has been great. They're doing really well going forward. So we want to keep up that momentum. We're here today to sign the budget for the state of Florida into law, and I want to thank Senator Leak. I want to thank Representative Leak, Representative Webster Barnaby, and I also want to thank Senator Tom Wright for working hard on what was supposed to be a really, really big disaster for Florida in terms of the fiscal impact. When you started to see the fallout from COVID last spring, the forecast for Florida, and really everywhere in the country, but particularly a service and tourism-based economy like we have in Florida, those predictions were dire. Well, I'm happy to report today that once I sign this budget, we will be signing a budget that responsibly supports our men and women in law enforcement, our K through 12 education students and teachers, conserves and protects our great environmental and natural resources throughout the state of Florida, but does so in a way that has the lowest per capita tax burden of any state in the country, and that has what will probably be $10 billion in reserve, which will be about 10% of the overall budget. And so you would have said that a year ago, no one would have believed that that would have been possible, and yet here we are. And part of the reason we were here is because we've had good stewards in the legislature who spend conservatively and responsibly, but also the fact that Florida has schools open, businesses open, and people having a right to work. That has made all the difference. And the fact that we were the first state in the country to put seniors first for vaccination. And so what happened was, different seniors approach it different ways. But I can tell you there were definitely some seniors that once they were vaccinated, they wanted to rush to restaurants. They wanted to be out and doing a lot of stuff. And so that's helped add fuel as well. And so we are, right now the budget will show about $9.5 billion in reserves, but that does not account the additional money that we'll likely get in June. So remember, they did the most recent estimate in April. We got almost $800 million over estimate in April. It looks like for May, we're going to be $500 million over estimate in terms of revenue coming in. We anticipate something similar for June. So if you get another $500 million, that's going to mean we have $10 billion in reserve in the state of Florida. The federal funds that haven't been spent is not counted in that. So you still have that there that they're going to be able to apply to infrastructure, whatever they want to do next session. This is purely just the state funds. And if you go back to last April, the shortfalls that everyone was predicting, look, we were obviously concerned about it. But as we got into the summer, we were open. I mean, I remember everyone, a lot of people were trying to tell me to close restaurants like this last summer. We didn't do it. We kept business open. We got kids in school. We did all those things. And the result was our economy really started to rebound. And then because you had a lot of these other states that just kept locking people down, we were the state lifting people up. That was good for Floridians, but we were also the landing spot for a lot of people that wanted to escape the insanity and come and get their mental, get recharged from escaping these lockdowns. And so we served as kind of the de facto West Berlin through a lot of the balance of this for the United States. And I think it's been benefited a lot of people throughout the country, but obviously it's benefited us. And had we not led the way we led, you would not have seen a lot of these other states coming and following Florida's lead as well. You look at Canada, you look at some of these countries in Europe, they're still chafing under lockdowns. They write into my office, the Canadians who have places here, and they say how much better it is in Florida than being chafing under these lockdowns. And so, we did it, and now we're in a situation where we're going to have a lot of opportunities for Floridians that have been preserved with this. I think that there's some really good stuff to point out. I mentioned our tax burden is currently the lowest amongst all states in the country on a per capita basis. Our spending per capita is also one of the lowest amongst the populous states that have big. And a state like New York, they have millions of people fewer than Florida, and their budget's more than twice the size of our budget in Florida, and yet we're delivering services better. Our infrastructure is much better. Our K-12 system performs better, and we have the #1 rated public university system in the United States, according to U.S. News and World Report. So we are responsible in how we're doing it. We obviously believe having a healthy economy undergirding it really makes an impact. But if you look at what we've been able to do, our budget here supports K-12 education more than the state has ever done. A lot of people were predicting steep cuts to K-12. That did not happen. We had the underlying strength in our economy, and being open made a big difference. We also were able to, last year we did the largest teacher compensation in a generation in Florida. A lot of people thought I should have vetoed that given COVID. I said, no, we're going to do it. We're going to make it work. So we got that again this year, and the legislature even increased that. So our goal is to have the average minimum salary throughout the state of Florida be $47,500. That'll make us, one of the top handful of states in the country. We were the bottom half of states. Now we're getting closer to being one of the better states. And it's an interesting fact. I think it's something like only 12% of school districts across America have an average minimum of even $40,000. And Florida, we have, and Corcoran can correct me, but I think it's 90% of our school districts are already over that there. So that's a big difference in terms of trying to get people who are talented to go in to the profession. And because we worked hard to have schools open, when a lot of these other places were keeping them closed, and even to this day, you have places throughout the United States where parents don't have meaningful access to in-person education. And how that could be the case is a disgrace. It's appalling. It is not based on any science or data whatsoever. This was all clear a year ago. Last June, we knew the kids needed to go back in school. How do we know? Because in every place around the world where they were back in school, it was safe, it was a low-risk environment, and obviously it was something that was very important to be doing for the kids. So we did it. And, we had the superintendents. They wanted to go back by and large, and most of the teachers wanted to go back. Now, the union sued us to close the schools, and we won that lawsuit. But I don't think that was representative of most of the teachers and principals. I think most of them understood how important it was, understood how important it is for the kids, and understood how important it was for the parents to be able to do this. And so because of that, I asked the legislature to do $1,000 bonuses for all principals and teachers, both for school districts and for public charter schools. And so this budget delivers on that. We will sign that in the law right now in just a few minutes. We also understand, and this is prior to COVID, but COVID exacerbated this, that we've got a lot of folks who are struggling with mental health concerns. My wife, the First Lady, has done a lot to bring awareness and for advocating for folks, particularly school-age children, who may be struggling along these lines and try to make sure that the money that's out there is actually going to the right places. So in this budget, we have $120 million for in-school mental health initiatives, so that's a $20 million increase over last year. We also have $5.5 million specifically for youth mental health awareness and assistance training to continue our work to address mental health in Florida schools. The First Lady's been instrumental in that as well. But we understand that the schools are one part. It's obviously bigger than just that. So we have $137.6 million in funding dedicated to community-based services for adults and children with mental wellness needs. Altogether, if you look across every agency, the budget that we'll sign today dedicates over $2.5 billion to mental health and substance abuse prevention and takes important steps in addressing the very real and very personal needs of Floridians. I can tell you this, whatever mental health issues developed in Florida as a result of COVID, they would be exponentially worse had we been locked down for a year. They'd be exponentially worse if people had lost their jobs for a year, if people were locked out of, kids were locked out of school for a year, and if all these businesses went out of business. And so we've got work to do in that regard, but quite frankly, the best mental health initiative we did was just have the state open and let people live normal lives, because when you try to isolate people for months on end, that is not natural. It's not normal, and it exacerbates a lot of problems that are pre-existing in society. So this is one of the best budgets the state's ever done for mental health and mental well-being. It's also one of the best budgets we've ever done for protecting Florida's water resources and natural environment. This is a central issue for our state. It was one of the major issues that I promised I would tackle when I became governor. We said we were going to go and do $2.5 billion in Everglades restoration and water quality over 4 years, and that was $1 billion more than had been done over the previous 4. Today, we're ahead of schedule on that. We're going to have well over $625 million for Everglades restoration and the protection of water resources. And so this is really significant, especially when you think about where people were assuming we would have been a year ago. A lot of people thought that this would we would lose our momentum with all that we've been able to achieve for Florida's environment, and in fact, we've been able. They actually did more than I even asked for in my budget on this, and so I think it's impressive to see how everybody's come together in Tallahassee to support our important natural resources. We also have other things just beyond some of the infrastructure projects. There's $302 million for targeted water quality improvements to achieve meaningful and measurable nutrient reductions in water bodies across the state, as well as to further implement the recommendations of our Blue-Green Algae Task Force. We also have a landmark program about promoting coastal resiliency, promoting resiliency against flooding and other environmental hazards that a flood-prone and storm-prone state like Florida has to deal with. And so we established the Resilient Florida program at my request. I signed that into law a couple weeks ago. That program has initial seed money of $500 million that will be in there, and then we now have a stream of money recurring over $100 million every year for resilience efforts. And so you have certain areas in Florida, prone to having severe flooding. There's things in infrastructure you can do to mitigate that. And I think that this is something that is a long-term commitment from our state. And we're happy that we were able to get it done. We also understand that one of the jewels of our state is that we have 1,300 miles of coastline. That's one of the reasons why people want to come to Florida. That's why a lot of people want to live in Florida. This budget includes $100 million in beach renourishment funding to continue addressing Florida's critically eroded shorelines. And And that's just from the state component. We also are dedicating $50 million, an additional $50 million in federal funding for beach renourishment. It's going to be a total of $150 million, which I think will be really, really good. And of course, we're continuing with $10 million for the Resilient Coastline Program within the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection within DEP. So this is something, these coastal resiliency grants will help protect Florida's coral reefs, which is obviously a first line of defense from storm surge. Also, they're a major tourism attraction. So we're doing, we got a lot of stuff, a lot of hands on deck to be able to address a lot of these. We're also able to fully fund the Department of Transportation's work program. So these investments are $10.3 billion. The investment will provide for the retention and creation of more than 148,000 jobs. And if you look what we were able to do when COVID hit, when people were working remotely, you saw a big reduction in traffic. We sped up some of those projects. We were able to make some good progress on I-4 in the Tampa Bay area and some other parts around the state, which was good. As the revenue declined, there was a concern that we were not going to be able to do future projects on target. Now with the fully funding of this, we're back on schedule, and hopefully we'll be able to even get ahead of schedule because of the significant investments that we've been able to do. So we're a growing state. We're proud of our infrastructure programs, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve. So our commitment to that is going to remain steadfast. We also address something that is very important, the seaports. You had these airlines, a lot of these industries got bailed out, but not our ports. And granted, some ports in Florida do very well with the traditional shipping. Other ports, like Port Canaveral here in Central Florida, much more dependent on cruise operations, which have been mothballed by the federal government for over a year. And so that's caused a big loss of revenue. So we're able to do $250 million from some of our federal relief funds to support our seaports so that they can return to pre-pandemic operational levels. And I think that that's going to be very, very important. Legislature's also given me almost $75 million for the Job Growth Grant Fund. So that's a fund that I can use, usually working with local governments to establish infrastructure improvements or job training projects. And I know we've done stuff in Central Florida. We did the airport in Brevard County a couple years ago. I vetoed the Job Growth Grant Fund in last year's budget simply because we didn't know what the revenue was going to be like. And I told everybody, there's stuff I'm vetoing. We vetoed $1 billion. There's stuff I'm vetoing. Some of this stuff is my stuff, so it's not necessarily me saying it's bad. It's just we're in uncharted territories. We got to make tough decisions. So we didn't have the Job Growth Grant Fund this past year. Starting July 1st, we'll have it again. It's a pretty significant amount of money, and we're going to be working hard to solicit requests from a lot of our communities throughout the state of Florida. So we are honored to be able to be here and sign this budget today. I think that there's a lot of great stuff going on in the state of Florida, and I think the budget really reflects a state government that is meeting the core concerns of Floridians. I didn't even mention we did $1,000 bonuses for all law enforcement and first responder. That's in this budget. So public safety, K-12 education, we still did all the stuff with our universities, which is important. We did the environment, natural resources, very, very important. And so infrastructure, roads, bridges, kind of the core stuff. And we're going to probably have $10 billion in reserve after we get the June numbers in, but clearly we're going to have $9.5 billion in reserve, meeting the needs of Floridians, all with having the lowest per capita tax burden in the country. And so we're proud of that, and we're going to make it official here in 1 second. Oh, before I do that, I forgot to mention. So our vetoes were about $1.5 billion. However, most of what I vetoed last time was coming from general revenue, some of the trust fund money and all that, and we did $1 billion. The vetoes here are mostly, the lion's share of it is the federal money that was going to go to our new emergency response fund. And I called for the creation of that The legislature did it. I think it's a great idea. The problem is, between the time I called for it and the legislature passed it and the present, the federal government issued guidance on how you could use the funds. And they basically did two things. One, made it clear that these are grants that would be subject to normal procurement. So in an emergency situation, you don't have the time to do normal procurement. You've got to do this very quickly. So it would defeat the purpose to try to use it for emergency response if you have to go through all that bureaucracy. But even more significantly is they said you can't use it for the purpose that we wanted to use it for, to create a fund to meet needs in the future. And so because of that, if we were to go forward with it, we were going to run into risk of having the feds come after us for it. We also functionally just wouldn't have been able to use it effectively because of having to go through the normal procurement and not being able to do in the emergency posture. So we had to veto that $1 billion. Now that money will then go and effectively be repurposed for all the other federal money that's been spent. We only got half of the money up front. And what the federal government did, they do whatever they can to hurt states like Florida and to help states that were locked down. So if you're a lockdown state with high unemployment, you got more money than your per capita basis. If we had lower unemployment, Florida got a lot less than our per capita allotment would be. Even more, they do 100% disbursement to the high unemployment states. They only disperse 50% of the funds right now to the free states and to the low unemployment states. So we have a situation in Florida where we're supposed to get, I think, $8.8 billion. We're only getting $4.4 billion off the top. By me vetoing this, that goes into basically the $4.4 billion. So I think we're going to end up being able to meet the needs because the legislature left a couple billion on the table they didn't even touch. But it's interesting how that works. So the federal funds, when we vetoed that, we're vetoing it because the subsequent guidance that came out made it clear to us that it was untenable to use the funds in those situations. I just want to make clear, though, I do think having an emergency response fund separate from general revenue is a good idea. I think if we're able to do that, you can then meet the emergency needs. You get reimbursed back into that fund from FEMA. You don't have to worry about the general revenue balance at that point. So we're going to work with the legislature, maybe see what we can do in this next upcoming legislative session. But for now, we're just not on solid footing, unfortunately. And we didn't really, the statute, it's not clear that this is a problem with that, but it's kind of the subsequent administrative guidance and what they would choose to fight over. So that's just that. But that's why, we have the $1.5 billion. The $1 billion is that emergency fund we tried to create, and it's just not allowable under the law. All right. Today is the 2nd, right? All right. You guys are going to get one of these pens, so be ready. Oh boy. All right. Hey, you're racking up these things. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Here, pass those out.
Thank you very much.
All right. Budget.
Yeah. Very good.
All right. Well, thanks for having us. We appreciate it. I can take a couple questions before I leave.
Governor, in the budget, we had 2 attacks on law enforcement in this area yesterday. One of the shootings last night involved 12 and a 14. The sheriff is very critical of the juvenile justice system. There are cuts in the budget for juvenile justice. Should we be doing more, giving more to that system?
I just got briefed on it this morning. It's my understanding that's not a DJJ facility where they were at. So I just need to learn a little bit more about kind of what happened with that. Obviously, it's a really problematic situation to have that. And then to have, I think one of the kids said, I didn't want to kill the police officer. I just wanted to shoot at him. That's despicable. So we're going to look in to see what the issue is with that. Yes, sir. Look, I think, here's what I'd say. Nikki Fried has done nothing in office. She does nothing. All she does is emote on social media, virtue signal to small dollar donors in California and New York. She put her face, spent millions of dollars to put her face on every gas pump across this state purely to boost her own image at your expense as a taxpayer. She's a lockdown lobbyist. She would have had our kids locked out of school the whole year. She would have had this business shuttered for the whole year. They would be out of business if Freed were governor. So she's opposed us at every turn. All the good stuff we've been able to accomplish for Florida, she opposes it. And I've done more, I think, in my first week as governor than she has done in her entire time as agriculture commissioner. One more. Yes, sir. Yeah, so I think we're better than ahead of schedule where we thought. We're not. I mean, our unemployment rate before the pandemic was about 2.9%. So I think what you're going to see is we have more job openings than I think. I mean, you guys probably are looking for folks. I've never seen an issue wherever I go in any part of the state. I mean, as you guys know, I mean, we've got a very diverse state. You know, if you're in Volusia County and then you go to Coral Gables or then you go to Pensacola, all these places, you know, all very rich, very, very unique places. Every single person will come up to me who has business saying, I need people, I want to hire, we need to hire more people. So I think what's going to happen is, you know, we do have the job search requirements back in. I think the incentives are going to be to get more folks back in the workforce. But as you have more people look, you may see the rate go up because some of the people who are kind of out aren't counted, but then I think you're going to see it go down. One of the things I'm concerned about, though, if you look at what's going on with the overall macro economy across the country, is inflation. And if you look at gas prices, I mean, these things are going through the roof compared to where they were a year and a half, 2 years ago. That is going to pinch a lot of folks. And so I hope that can be kept into check. Obviously, a state government, this is kind of more involved in federal policy at that point. But that's a big, big problem. And I think that, yes, there's a lot of good things going on in Florida. I think we have a path to, you know, to put a lot more people back to work. But I also worry about some of those macro signals that we're seeing in the economy. And look, in the last, 15 months, this federal government has added more to the debt than we've ever seen since World War II in such a short period of time. And my view on that is just, look, there's got to be something's got to be done. There's going to be, the bill's going to come due somehow, whether that's higher interest rates, higher inflation, you know, I'm not sure. But it is a concern, and I know when you look around to see the gas prices and everything, but I can tell you this, in Florida, you know, we have ruled out from the beginning any increase in the gas tax. So we're not going to do that to consumers because we know how much that hits them. So thank you, everybody. We'll be back very, very soon, and you can't ask for a better quality of life than New Smyrna Beach. I'll tell you what, it's great.
Just a quick note, my chef here, our chef, Chef Michael Perry, and I have been together for 30 years.
Where is
He's probably over there where the buffet is next door.
Sure.
He's preparing lunch for you.
We've got a nice little luncheon in the Blue Bar next door.
Great to see you. The chef, everybody.
Thank you.
What's your most popular item?
It all depends. How many kids do you have?
I have 3.
Do you have a favorite?
Favorite kid? Oh, I can never do that.
Everything on the menu.
Okay.
That's my, everything I put
Well,
on
actually,
with love.
you catch me on the right day, maybe I would be able to.
Okay, same thing. So, I mean, it's a little bit of love, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You know, I mean, I like the spuntatore. I like the, you know, seafood Italiano. I like the cioppino.
Good.
All my childhood favorites. So,
Awesome.
all
Well,
right.
good to see
Once
you.
again,
Yeah,
thank
thanks so much. Yep.
Thank you very
Great
much.
to see you guys.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We're going to try to do that one. We're going to try to do the Lincoln dinner.
Tim and I are doing a show tomorrow.
Good.
Yeah, we're down all this. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure to meet you.
Got your pen.
Thank you so much for your hospitality.
Hey,